Good afternoon, Chairman Williams and Vice Chairman Youngblood, members of the board. How you doing?
Good afternoon. How you doing?
All right, all right, all right.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Secretary, we're ready to start.
I'm ready.
I most certainly am. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you all to this very important meeting today, Tuesday, May 4th, 2021, being held at the Microsoft Teams platform via video conference. Please note this meeting will be recorded and feature public comment. Commissioners, I would ask that you mute your microphones when you're not speaking and to verbally identify yourselves prior to making any comments. Additionally, I'd like to welcome Councilman Woodard and Councilman Lucas Burke, who I think have joined us for the meeting today. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, this is Regina Jackson, Planning and Zoning Coordinator. I will now confirm that all members of the Planning Commission are present and can hear me by calling the roll. Commissioners, when I call your name, please reply with a verbal response. Commissioner Williams.
Present.
Commissioner Youngblood.
Here.
Commissioner Thaxton.
Here.
Commissioner G.
Here.
Commissioner Coleman.
Here.
Commissioner Page.
Here.
Commissioner Barnes.
Here.
7 members of the Planning Commission are present. This public meeting of the Planning Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Northam's March the 12th, 2020 executive order due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth given the outbreak of COVID-19. A quorum of the commission is not physically present in the meeting location, but members have joined remotely. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted on the city's planning department webpage with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will be recorded and feature public comment. Even if members of the public do not provide comment, participants are advised that people may be listening who do not provide comment, and those persons are not required to identify themselves. For this meeting, Planning Commission is convening by video conference via Microsoft Teams app as posted on the city's website, identifying how the public may join. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Commissioners, before you are the minutes of the April 6, 2021 public hearing. Do any commissioners have any corrections or changes to the minutes? If so, please state your name before stating the changes. If there aren't any changes, we are in need of a motion to approve the minutes. Commissioners are asked to mute their microphones when they're not speaking and to verbally identify yourself prior to speaking. Commissioners, before making a motion, please identify yourself.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion for the approval of the minutes. This is Commissioner Page.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
It's Commissioner G, a second.
Madam Secretary, we have a motion and a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I motioned and a second to approve the minutes from the April the 6th, 2021 public hearing. Commissioners, as I call your name, please reply with a verbal response. Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner Youngblood?
Yes.
Commissioner Thaxton?
Yes.
Commissioner G,
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman,
Yes.
Commissioner Page,
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes.
Yes.
The minutes have been approved by a vote of 7-0. Announcements of future meetings and conferences. Please note that our next scheduled public hearing is Tuesday, June the 1st, 2021 at 1:30 p.m. The public hearing will be held in the Microsoft Teams platform via video conference. Items reviewed today will be presented to City Council for action at their July 13th, 2021 or July 27, 2021 virtual meeting or as otherwise noted. We also ask that you mute your microphones when you're not speaking and to verbally identify yourself prior to making any comments. Our first public hearing item, CBE-21 and 22 and S-21-01 applicants have asked for a deferral of these items until the Planning Commission's June the 1st Planning Commission meeting. Mr. Chairman, we are in need of a motion to approve both of these items for our June the 1st Planning Commission meeting.
Commissioners, we are in need of a motion to defer items CBE 21-01 and S 21-01. Is there a motion? Commissioners?
This is Peter Youngblood. I make a motion that we defer CBE 21-01 and S 21-01 until our June meeting.
Commissioners, we have a motion. Is there a second?
This is Sherry Thaxton. I'll second.
Madam Secretary, we have a motion and a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a motion and a second to defer CBE-21-01 and S-21-01. Just for a point of reference, Mr. Chairman, these two items we will not have a public hearing. They will be re-advertised for that meeting. Commissioners, we have a motion and a second to defer these items. As I call your name, please reply with a verbal response. Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner Youngblood?
Yes.
Commissioner Thaxton?
Yes.
Commissioner G?
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman? Commissioner Coleman?
Yes.
Commissioner Page?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Yes.
These items will be deferred until our June the 1st, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. Our next item, Z-21-02 Uptown. Trenton Walker of Pyramid Enterprises LLC requests the rezoning of 2217 and 2221 Queen Streets from light industrial IL to multifamily urban residential URM to construct a single family dwelling on the combined lots. The properties are further described as tax map 76, parcel 67 and 68. The Build One Portsmouth Comprehensive Plan recommends light industrial development. The staff coordinator is Stacy Porter. Will the staff coordinator for this application please come forward and present your application at this time?
Thank you, Ms. Jackson.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Commissioners, and this is Stacy Porter, one of the senior planners with the Planning Department, and I'll now provide a brief presentation on the applicant's request. The properties are vacant of any site development, and according to the city assessor records, when combined are 0.144 acres in size, and that's approximately 6,272 square feet. Please note that there are single-family homes immediately abutting both sides of these vacant lots. And I'll now provide an overview of the surrounding area land uses and zoning. This slide shows the north and east, and the surrounding area is zoned IL, light industrial. To the north is a vacant parcel as well as residential development. To the east is also residential development. This is a view of the south and west. To the south is commercial development on High Street, and to the west is residential development, as well as the city's Public Utilities Operations Center. And this is the site plan that was provided by the applicant. The proposed single-family home will be a two-story structure, which I've highlighted in blue, that will provide 2,100 square feet of living space. The home's exterior amenities include a two-car concrete driveway, which I've highlighted in yellow, along the front of the home, and a 10 by 12 deck on the rear of the home. These are the elevations that were submitted by the applicant, which provides the details of the proposed two-story home with one-car garage, covered front porch, and rear deck. According to the zoning ordinance, the proposed single-family development would not be permitted in the light industrial IL zoning district. Considering both the residential lot development pattern in the vicinity and the lot size of 6,272 square feet, staff determined that the appropriate zoning district for the applicant's rezoning request would be multifamily urban residential, or URM, which is a zoning district that allows for single-family dwellings with a minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet. The generalized future land use map of the Bill 1 Portsmouth Comprehensive Plan designates 2217 and 2221 Queen Street for light industrial uses. However, this portion of the city remains residential in nature, and vacant lots within the vicinity continue to be developed with residential land uses. Though the future land use map recommends light industrial development, due to the existing residential land use pattern of the neighborhood, the applicant's proposal for infill lot development to accommodate a single-family residence is appropriate. Staff recommends the approval of the applicant's request for the rezoning of 2217 and 2221 Queen Street. The proposed development meets the URM zoning district's development standards and is compatible with the residential lot development within the vicinity of the parcel. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Porter. We will now entertain questions from the commissioners. I will start first, and I'll call each of your names and allow you the same opportunity. Ms. Porter, did you receive any comment from the surrounding area?
I didn't.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Youngblood?
I have no questions. I'll just make a comment that this is virtually a dead-end street at that point, and so it would be hard in my mind to see any light industrial use there because it's kind of an awkward thing to drive into. Thank you.
It is. Commissioner Thaxton?
I have no questions.
Commissioner G?
I have no questions.
Commissioner Coleman?
I have no questions.
Commissioner Page?
I have no questions.
Commissioner Barnes? Commissioner Barnes? Commissioner Barnes?
Mr. Chairman, I
Looks like
believe
she might
she's
be- She
frozen.
might be frozen, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Madam Secretary, let's proceed.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the public hearing on item Z-21-02.
No questions.
Citizens will, okay, great. Citizens will be called upon to provide comments or questions and are asked to verbally identify yourself prior to making comments and to mute your microphone when you're not speaking. Will the applicant for Z-21-02 come forward to provide any additional information or comments? State your name and your address for the record, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak.
Hello, Planning Commission. This is Trent Walker with Pyramid Enterprises. I just want to say thank you for the consideration for hearing our request. Ms. Porter, you did an amazing job of presenting our case. Standing by for any questions. Thank you.
This is Peter Youngblood. I have a question here. Is this the same developer that's building the 5 houses, the new construction houses, just to the east of this property?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Thaxton?
No, sir, I have no questions.
Commissioner G?
I have no questions.
Commissioner Coleman?
I have no questions.
Commissioner Page?
No questions.
Commissioner Barnes?
No questions.
Madam Secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing on item Z-21-02. If there is someone on the call who would like to address this application, you may do so at this time. Come forward, state your name and your address for the record, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak. Appearing to be none, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, this public hearing is now closed.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Yes, sir.
Commissioners, we are now in need of a motion and a second for Z-21-02.
This is
This is
Commissioner.
Peter Youngblood. I'd like to make a motion that we approve Z-21-02 as presented.
Commissioner G, I second.
Madam Secretary, we have a motion and a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, as I call your name, please reply with a verbal response. Commissioner Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Youngblood,
Yes.
Commissioner Thaxton,
Yes.
Commissioner G,
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman,
Yes.
Commissioner Page,
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes.
Yes.
This item is approved 7-0. Our next item, UP-21-09 Uptown. Alvin Kills of D&K Builders requests a use permit for a 52-unit townhouse development on approximately 4.1 acres of land located at 1107 and 1021 High Street in the neighborhood mixed-use NMU zoning district with a proposed density of 12.65 dwelling units per acre. The future land use map of the Build One Portsmouth Comprehensive Plan designates this area as a mixed-use corridor. The properties are owned by the Portsmouth Economic Development Authority and are identified as Tax Map 63, Parcel 3, and Parcel 4. The staff coordinator is Julie Chop. Will the coordinator for this application please come forward and present your application at this time?
Good afternoon, planning commissioners, city council men and women. This is Julie Chop, senior planner with the city of Portsmouth. This use permit application involves the property at 1107 and 1021 High Street. Alvin Keels is requesting a use permit for A4 Landing at High Street, a 52-unit, 3-story townhouse development. The 4.1 acre property is in the neighborhood mixed use zoning district in the uptown area of the city in the newly established Innovation Overlay District and is located along High Street adjacent to the downtown D1 district and the downtown design overlay district. The site is vacant of structures and formerly contained the Mary Jane Bakery building, which was demolished by the city in 2019 to make way for future development. North of the subject property, across High Street, are commercial buildings zoned downtown D1 T5 and neighborhood mixed use. The parcels zoned D1 T5 are also in the downtown design overlay district. East of the proposed site are commercial parcels zoned D1 T5 in the downtown design overlay district. Directly south of the property is Victory Square Apartments, a 4-story, 112-unit senior living residential development that is zoned neighborhood mixed use. A religious institution, New Mount Olive Baptist Church, is also located to the south of the subject property. A 122-unit apartment development zoned NMU called Phoebus Square Apartments is located across King Street south of the 1107 High Street property. Commercial buildings zoned NMU are located to the west of the subject property. The proposed townhouse development is the first project proposed for the Innovation Overlay District, which was established by the city in February of 2021. The proposed development includes 52 3-story townhouse residential units consisting of 8 buildings, each housing 6 townhouses, and 1 building housing 4 townhouses, for a total of 9 buildings on the 1107 and 1021 High Street properties. The buildings are proposed to be set back 12 to 15 feet from the right-of-way in order to comply with the city zoning ordinance and the High Street Corridor Multimodal Concept Plan. The townhouse units are staggered within each building to improve scale and massing. The height of each building is approximately 35 feet. The submitted conceptual site plan for the A4 Landing at High Street development displays 2 vehicular access points off of King Street to a private 26-foot alley. The rear of each townhouse unit is proposed to include a 2-car garage and a private driveway along the alley. An open space set aside and a low-impact development BMP are shown to the southeast of the site. The proposed development includes 0.42 acres of open space set aside. Floor plans and elevations of all sides with proposed materials for the interior and corner unit townhouses are included as attachments to this application, and conformity will be conditioned as part of this use permit. The proposed townhouses include a 250 square foot rooftop outdoor living space on the 3rd floor of each unit overlooking High Street and King Street, as well as a 180 square foot 2nd floor deck facing the interior of the site. This slide shows the front elevation and the front rendering. This slide shows the side and rear elevations. The proposed materials of the townhouses include 3 shades of cementous smooth panel siding and 4 colored variations of brick veneer. The proposed townhouse project will serve as an extension of downtown and will complement the surrounding land uses. The proposed development is consistent with the recommendations of the D2 Uptown Land Use Study, as well as the city's Build One Portsmouth Comprehensive Plan. Staff recommends approval of the use permit request with the recommended conditions. Staff did receive one comment from the community that was emailed to the commissioners shortly before this meeting. This concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to stand by for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Chop. Commissioners, I will call each of your names to see if you have any additional questions of Ms. Chop. Ms. Chop, could you tell us, you say you received one email?
Yes, I did. Or yes, we did receive one email earlier today. And that was emailed to you shortly before the meeting.
Oh, okay. Just in case some of us didn't see it, can you tell us what it said?
It's a pretty thorough email.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Then don't bother.
Well, I believe that the applicant or the community member is on the line. So he might be able to give a synopsis of it during the public comment portion of the meeting.
Then fine. I'll wait till that time then. Commissioner Youngblood?
I have no questions at this time.
Commissioner Thaxton?
I have no questions right this minute. Thank you.
Commissioner G?
Ms. Chop, have we received any other applications for this property in the recent history?
Not that I'm aware. I do know that the city demolished the old Mary Jane Bakery in 2019, and the Economic Development Authority has been marketing the site for development.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Coleman?
I have no questions.
Commissioner Page?
No questions at this time.
Commissioner Barnes?
No questions.
Madam Secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the public hearing on item UP-21-09. Citizens will be called upon to provide comments or questions and are asked to verbally identify yourself prior to making comments and to mute your microphone when you're not speaking. Will the applicant for UP-21-09 come forward to provide any additional information or comments? State your name and your address for the record, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak.
Yes, my name is Alvin Keels. My address is 4061 Estates Lane, Portsmouth, Virginia. I don't have much more to add. I'm hoping that the Planning Commission will see this as an enhancement to the downtown area. My goal with this project is to bring a high quality product, targeting high-end professionals, to create an extension off of downtown, very similar to other metropolitan areas. And the goal behind these townhomes is to bring that target demographic to downtown. It's cutting edge, it's different. I think it'll be great for the city of Portsmouth. And I appreciate you guys taking this under consideration, and hopefully you'll approve it. I have my architects and engineers also calling in as speakers. So if you guys have any specific questions about design, they'll be more than equipped to address any questions you may have. So
thank you, Mr. Keels. Commissioners, I will call each of your names to see if you have any questions for Mr. Keels or his associates. I have none. Commissioner Youngblood?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Mr. Keels, I appreciate the idea of bringing more residents downtown. That's certainly in keeping with the Portsmouth citywide strategic housing plan dated June 2020. But I've got a couple specifics here that I'm unclear about. Each of these units is going to be about 3,000 square feet. Is that correct?
That's correct. Around 2,600 square feet of heated living space.
I added it up and I got to 3,455 with the decks and 3,025 without the decks for the, let's see, for the corner units, and 3,448 with the decks and 3,018 without the decks. That's a fine point, but what I'm getting at is these are pretty big houses. What do you expect these to sell for?
Well, when you're including your square footage, are you including the garage? Because I was including just the heated areas, which is.
Yes, I am.
Okay, all right. The target price point, will be right around 300,000 for these units.
So let me see what's that per square foot?
I mean, you have to do the math. It's right around.
Did you say 2,800 is your figure?
No, I got $115 a square foot, which is actually low.
No, what I'm saying is if you're selling these for 300,000 and how many square feet did you figure? Because I figured something more than what you were figuring.
You can only count the heated square footage when you're doing your square footage numbers per square foot. So
okay.
The number that I'm coming in at is right around $115 per square foot. And I may sell them for more than 300,000, but 300 will be the minimum.
Okay. Well, I've talked to some builders and I think you'd be hard pressed to be able to build these and sell them at anything other than a loss if you're doing it at $115 a square foot. In fact, regionally in Suffolk, townhouses similar to this are 150 to 170 square feet. Chesapeake's 130 to 180. Hampton is 120 to 160, and Norfolk is 110 to 160. 110 being really, really low. So I'm thinking that you describe these as being high quality, and yet you're pricing them to a point where they're not much. I mean, I really think these are going to be cheap, unless your figures are way off, and and then you start adding amenities, and then you bump the price up to 400,000, and then that creates another issue because it creates an affordability problem for Portsmouth with given our economics. Quite frankly, I think that this property would be much better developed as apartments. Our citywide strategic housing plan recommends senior housing in the downtown area. And I don't see how any seniors are going to be able to afford this. So I think that although it's great to bring more housing to downtown, I don't like this idea at all for those reasons. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Youngblood. Commissioner Thaxton.
Yes, sir. I do have a couple of questions. I just want to be clear. You said each unit will have a 2-car garage.
Yes, each unit will have a 2-car garage. Can I go back to Mr. Youngblood? He made a lot of assumptions and then exited. I didn't have a chance to respond. I think that first and foremost, I'm taken back by the level of research and the pro forma that you performed on this particular project. When I came to you guys, a little less than 2 months ago, and I presented numbers and a pro forma, and it was totally ignored. But to speak on your comment, I'm actually selling homes in Prentice Park right now for $350,000, and that's in Prentice Park. So if I had to go to 350, I could for these townhomes. I believe I could get upwards of 375 for these townhomes. But I'm actually doing this deal, this development deal. I'm working with economic development on not trying to hit a total home run on my margins. I build right now at a price per square foot that gives me a sufficient margin if I were to sell these at $115 per square foot. So I don't know which builders you spoke to, but I built a quality product. Hopefully you've researched some of the work that I've done. And so this product here, I have some fluctuation in my price point of what I'm going to sell for, and I would not just totally count out that these units would not go for $400,000. I think they could. I'm not setting that as my entry point, but I think they could. Like I said, in Prentice Park, right up the street on Elm Street, I'm getting $350,000 for a single family home. And those homes won't be as luxurious as these townhomes. And so to say that they're going to be cheap, it's almost borderline insulting, because I know what I can build for, and I know what it is that I put into my product. And I think that you should do a little bit more homework before you assume, versus talking to just another builder from another city. You could have reached out to me prior to this meeting to ask me what I was building these homes at. So that's my response. But I didn't mean to cut Mrs. Thaxton off, but I did want to respond to Mr. Youngblood.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Keels.
Mr. Keels, I appreciate your response. I did talk to Ryan Holmes also here in Portsmouth at Newport, and they're currently selling for $145. So I understand your point of view, but I had to express what I've done, what my research has shown, and I stand by what I said earlier. But anyway, thanks for your response. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Thaxton, were you finished?
No, but thank you. So you said that each unit will have a 2-car garage, correct?
Correct.
And the parking, how are you going to control the overflow parking? Because in some communities I've seen, they've had issue with visitors, if you will, parking in the alleyway. Is there going to be some way to control the overflow parking, or keep them from backing up in the alley, if you will?
We have extended driveways, which will accommodate additional vehicles per unit. The driveway should be able to accommodate at least 2 additional vehicles. You also have parking along High Street, as you can see in this illustration, for overflow parking. And then, but my engineers who have put this site plan together can speak on this a little bit more. But that was one of the initial questions, was parking, and we see that there's plenty of parking, for the average resident. Any overflow parking, they would have to park along High Street.
Okay. And I have one more question, if you don't mind, please. The 4.2 acre of open space, do you have any plans for that for the future, or are you just going to leave it as open space?
The 4.2 acres of open space?
The green space that you have in the corner here on this diagram.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna leave that as green space.
Okay. And then did you talk to the Civic League? Anybody have any comments or concerns about the project?
I don't think a Civic League, I haven't spoken to a Civic League on this. I don't know that a Civic League, if this is in any Civic League's jurisdiction.
Okay. Any of the neighbors, anyone have any comments?
No. I'm actually, the only neighbor I've spoken to is across the street. I'm actually looking to if this goes well, expand and purchase some land across the street. But
Mr. Blunt supported it. Pastor Blunt, he supported it.
The church did support it. I'm sorry, Pastor Blunt supported the project. And then we just received an email from Cliff Page, who's a neighbor across the street, and you know, I haven't had a chance to dive into it. It was pretty long, but yeah, Pastor Blunt from the church, he definitely supports it.
Well, I think they look really nice. So thank you for answering my questions.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner G.
Good afternoon, Mr. Keels. Thank you for this presentation today. I find this an interesting project because I see myself as the demo that this is built around. As a established family, we are literally in the market for this size at this price point. I do know, to Mr. Youngblood's point, the market right now is crazy when it comes to real estate buying, and the prices are fluctuating quite a bit. My question is, as you are developing these, and you kind of did just address it as you talked about the properties across the street, what is the next step, and how do you see this property fitting into the rest of downtown?
That's a great question. I think that this is going to give this corridor of downtown a boost for economic development. I know that when talking about this project, you know, I viewed it more as a partnership with the city, because the city's trying to bring in, you know, a grocery store and more retail on this side of Effingham, and I think that this will give, along with the water project, this will give the density that will be needed to attract a Lidl or an Aldi or you know, other types of retail. My goal is, you know, I don't want to speak too much because I don't want to drive the price up. The city owns that grassy parcel across the street, and then Mr. Holmes owns the rest of that block, and then Cliff Page is up in the corner. My goal is to, you know, acquire that and to develop that, and I may do an apartment development there. It's kind of what I'm thinking. You know, and so the goal is to really get rid of some of these rundown buildings and bring life to High Street, and to extend our downtown the same way Norfolk has over the years with Ghent. You know, the same way Atlanta did years ago with Buckhead. You know, I want High Street to be an attraction from Norcom all the way down to the water. And so this will be the first step. So, you know, that's the goal. And I'm glad you brought up the fluctuation as far as where the market is right now with real estate. When I actually, you know, put this deal together, you know, construction costs were X and resale values were Y. All of that has changed in the last, you know, in the last 4 or 5 months. And so, you know, if you've been in the housing market, you actually see what's going on. I think this will be great for Portsmouth.
I did have one additional question, one concern I had along the High Street corridor. I didn't, in the images, I didn't see any lighting. What was going to be done about lighting along that sidewalk and walkway?
We're going to have to bring some lighting. That's a discussion that you know, I guess we can go back to the walkway. Julie, can you go back to the walkway by any chance on High Street? Yeah, okay. Yeah, right there. Yeah, so we'll add lighting. We'll have to work with the city on adding lighting on that, along that sidewalk, but that's definitely, it's going to be a well-lit sidewalk.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Commissioner Coleman.
Hi, thank you. I apologize for not having my camera on. It lags when I have the camera on, so I apologize. But I do appreciate, Mr. Keels, your response to the questions. It's really cleared up a lot, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Commissioner Page.
Good afternoon. I just have one question. What is your estimated completion date for this project if approved?
That the goal is to complete this project within 18 to 24 months of, once we actually get the approval to break ground. I'm praying that, after approval, that my permitting process to pull my permits can get done in relatively short fashion. But the goal is the first units will hit the market in 2022 at some point. And with the last units being the end of 23, maybe the beginning of 24.
Thank you.
Commissioner Barnes.
No question.
Thank you. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing on item UP-21-09. I do have a few speakers on this item. Chris Stubbs is available if anyone, the commissioners, have any questions for him. And I also have Tom Rattenauer.
Thank you, ma'am. I'd like to go ahead and take my 5 minutes if possible.
Thank you.
Thank you, Planning Commission members, for allowing me to speak about this project. My name is Tom Rettenauer. My office address is 432 Battlefield Boulevard South, Chesapeake, Virginia. We are the architects for the project. I'd like to start off with a saying from Yoda from May the 4th, and that saying is, "Always in motion is the future." And we see this as the future for High Street as it moves from the urban core. We've designed the project to extend the urban vocabulary of downtown along High Street and King Street. The project is an excellent example of how to utilize the innovation overlay district that you've just recently developed. The units themselves offer a unique rooftop deck experience that really is not available at this time in Portsmouth. The experience will allow the residents to enjoy the views in multiple directions from the rooftop. The entry to the units is reminiscent of an urban brownstone, and will have individual entries with the garages out of view. The modern design and various materials are within keeping of the idea of a clean, modern appearance to the building. Each unit is well defined in a vertical nature and creates a streetscape that is enjoyable and varying. We agree with the findings of the planning department, and I have a couple of other responses to some of the questions that we're getting so far. In regards to the cost of the actual construction, there will be multiple options inside the units that will basically be able to have the price go up or down. So there would be unfinished spaces that would be on the ground floor, and then you also have on the upper floor the media room and the outside deck. So in regards to the price ranges, the starting price would be within the range that Alvin's talking about, and then as you finish the spaces, of course, the cost would go up at that point. But we still see in this being a very good example that's available to first-time home buyers, especially with the Virginia housing opportunities at this point. We're using mostly masonry materials throughout the project, as you can see along the streetscape, again, reminiscence of that brownstone kind of feel. The green space that we have off onto the side, we've looked at a couple of various uses. It could be a pet area, a children's area, or a combination at that point. In regards to a couple of the other questions in regards to lighting, of course, we would have to meet the city requirements using photometric design to make sure that the lighting levels are correct along the streetscape at this point. And again, finally, we see this just as really as a spark to extend the development from the urban core and start looking at the rest of the city as part of a whole instead of parts. So that is what I have to say at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Our next speaker for this item is Mr. Tony Goodwin. If you're on the line, please come forward, state your name and your address, and you have 5 minutes to speak.
Yes, good afternoon, commissioners and the chair of the Planning Commission. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Tony Goodwin, and I reside just north of this project in the Parkview section of the city, as well as have an office right here at 900 High Street. I would like to say that thank you to Mr. Keels for taking the interest into Portsmouth and doing what he's doing in both the western part of the city as well as now in downtown, and his team at Hoggard and Ure. Just a little backstory. I'm, of course, a commercial real estate agent, have been marketing Broadband Subcommittee of the viable to the commercial. High Street, of course, historically has been a commercial corridor and will be until basically it is covered with water, I'm sure, at some point in time. In the meantime, this area was also considered historically, as annexation was coming through, the commercial or market area for the city, surprisingly enough, creating services and products available to the residents of the Old Town or downtown area. Would like to kind of see that still happen. I think that a couple people on the phone call here will also remember that a lot of conversation between the Urban Land Institute discussions with Ray Gendros from years ago, most importantly talked about, and if Julie, you could turn it back to the slide of page 6, but talked about the connectivity of the grid or the original city grid, and taking into consideration where we all have witnessed the challenges of the dead ends of both Hatton Street at London and Primrose Street at London. The recommendations by ULI, and most others have said open those streets back up to London. But more importantly, at this development site, making the streets of Primrose and Hatton connect to King Street as well. Because one of the things that I see that's a fatal flaw of this whole project is 52 housing units being accessed by a 28-foot wide one-way street of King Street. It's kind of a mixed bag there in front of the senior housing to the southeast, where it is two ways, but when you get down to Elm Avenue, it's actually a one-way street heading west. So I would, of course, encourage our friends over here at Hoggard Yor to consider looking at opening up Hatton Street to King Street and Primrose Street to Phoebus Street, and recreating the original town grid that has been always talked about during a number of basically conversations throughout the community and the public. I'd also like to ask about the possibility of continuing commercial. This is a very reminiscent feel of what Freemason does for downtown Norfolk. And in the Freemason Historic District, it does create some opportunity for live work, either office or small retail, on the ground floor. And I think by taking away the potential of commercial on High Street would only continue to foster a blank spot basically in the commercial corridor. So either be taking some of the 3-story units on the corners and creating one more floor at the base for an office space that could be tied to the residents. That would give you another selling point to where I think the pattern or trend that's going to head into, and we would be great to have this opportunity, is true live work areas. And since this is neighborhood mixed use, that would definitely define the idea of mixed use, where you have both commercial or office and professional space tied with the residential directly upstairs. I would also like to say that if that does create a little bit of height on the corner, I think the concept is great. And the industrial look is perfect for what we need down in that area. It defines the history of what that area used to be. But more importantly, if you created a little bit more height rather than the setbacks varying to create the massing, I think you'll find that if you are interested and willing to put the cut through of the streets back into the project and kind of tie it all in to where you can have access to the High Street corridor, then consider possibly making those two corners maybe 4 stories. Parking on High Street, yes, it might be.
Time's up, Mr. Goodwin. That's 5 minutes, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next speaker is Cliff Page. If you would please, if you're on the line, come forward, state your name and your address for the record, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak.
Mr. Page, we can see that you're unmuted, but we cannot hear you if you are speaking. Madam Secretary, do you want to just try and call his name one more time? He's muted again.
Mr. Page, Cliff Page, would you come forward, please? State your name and your address for the record. You will be given up to 5 minutes to speak.
Still not hearing anything.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, would you like for me to move forward with any additional speakers and then give Mr. Page an opportunity to come back at the end?
Yeah, Madam Secretary, why don't we move forward and then allow Mr. Page to come back at the end?
Okay. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing on item UP-21-09. If there's anyone on the call who did not get an opportunity to register and would like to address this application, you may come forward, state your name and your address for the record, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. This is Mark Gadula-Yatrovsky, PO Box 50141, Portsmouth 23703. And these are not the droids you're looking for. Oh, I'm sorry. That was the other meeting. So Mr. Keels has brought to the city the second project that I've been cognizant of, and he is once again pushing the envelope in terms of features that we've not seen quite this way before. And since this is the innovation zone, seems like an appropriate place for them to be put on display and discussed. In looking at the design, if you have access to PDF pages 14 and 15, either one would illustrate my point. It's an interesting concept in terms of the floor plan. So it's essentially living on 3 levels in separate spaces. As an older person, I would have some concerns for myself, not necessarily today, but as hopefully I get older, that the owner's bedroom, as it's described, lies on the 3rd floor of each particular unit. So that means at least 2 flights of stairs in each direction, probably multiple times a day. The media room also occupies that level. The kitchen is on the 2nd floor, a little more user-friendly, I would say, in terms of the steps that have to be navigated. And of course, if I didn't want the amenities that are laid out on the 3rd floor plan, I could be in the first floor, going from there to the bathroom, the laundry room, mudroom, and the garage as my principal hangout. But I'm sure that there are different lifestyles for different people of different ages. And I don't think that this is geared specifically for 55 and older individuals. For younger people, there might be some benefit to a layout of this sort. I do have a concern with the open air third floor spaces arrayed across these buildings. If everybody decides to have a Mother's Day cookout at the same time, it could be quite the party atmosphere up at the third floor level. And those who are not in a festive mood might find it a little bit much. But again, that's something that different strokes for different folks. Finally, let me comment on the parking situation. In terms of overflow parking, in the write-up, notice King Street was mentioned as a possibility for overflow. King Street is pretty narrow, and despite its marking, it sometimes hosts two-way traffic. I think you park at your own risk on King Street. High Street is definitely wider, but the traffic speed on High Street. Okay, I'll wrap up.
That's
Thank
5
you.
minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Secretary.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there anyone else here who would like to address UP-21-09?
This is Mr. Page. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, Mr. Page, we can hear you.
Yes,
We
there's
can
something
hear you,
wrong with your
Mr.
system.
Page. You
Yeah,
have
I was
5
pushing
minutes
your
to
mute buttons and they don't work. All right, I am Cliff Page. I have two properties directly across the street at Primrose Street and High Street. And I've been here for close to 50 years, and I've seen the ups and downs of this neighborhood many times over the years and dealt with all of their problems. I also served as a charter member of the Design Review Committee for 5 years. And as a member of that, I've dealt with a lot of the issues that you're trying to deal with today. I've also dealt with every consultancy that's been hired by this city in the last 40 years, and I've been involved with all the comprehensive plans. Let me start out by saying this, but before I do, I can't say everything I got to tell you in 5 minutes. I have taken the time to give you an extensive, detailed study of this matter, and I would request that you defer this matter at least until you can read what I've got to say, because I deal with a lot of issues that some people have already dealt with in different ways. But first of all, let me discuss this. Properties in the 3 blocks bounded by Effingham Street, High Street, Primrose Street, and Queen Street are in the state-designated Downtown Historic District and in the Portsmouth-designated Uptown Historic District. This district is listed in the National Historic Preservation List and is protected under 36 CFR 800.5.2, Section 106, the Virginia Code 15.2, Section 2306, and falls under the purview of the DDC committee. These laws and codes supersede local codes and must be adhered to under federal law, and the city must comply with the state's Dillon rule. Major changes, new construction and demolition on abutting properties, 2 properties in the historic district must meet all federal, state, and local standards, laws, and requirements. This includes review by commission and committee established to review such matters under state law. In this case, the properties on the south side of High Street and facing the properties in the historic district on the north side are considered abutting properties by the Virginia Department of Historic Resources. Therefore, this project must be vetted by the DDC, and all rights of due process are preserved to the various parties by state law. Likewise, the VDHR must be notified of any proposals that would affect the rights of property of these owners in the historic district. The planning staff and the planning commission cannot make singular authorization without approval from these other entities. This is very important. Already, the economic development has, or PRHA, has destroyed Evans Electric across the street without permission of the DDC. It destroyed the bakery without DDC. And the PRHA and the former city manager and the environmental inspector committed felonies in bringing down the oasis. Let's not see any more of this. Let's go through the proper channels, and let's bring in the Virginia Department of Historic Resources. Properties across the street must be addressed in anything that happens on the south side of the street. You are considered abutting properties. Now, I have a number of things in concern about this issue, particularly starting with the sidewalks. We never built the brick sidewalks to Elm Avenue. They should be. The buildings should not be set back as if it's in suburbs like with grass in front of it. I was instrumental in getting the buildings to be able to maximize the footprint all the way to the sidewalk. These are 18-foot sidewalks out there, and they should be brick. They should have proper lighting. The city should put up the expense for that. And we need to have some more human abilities to engage in these things. If I look at the footprint of this building, it looks like a slave ship coming from Africa. And if I look at the elevation, it looks like stacked outhouses. I'm very concerned about the architectural design here and its row house type of effect, but it has no bearing on any of the architecture in the rest of the city. And the only thing that it comes close to is the properties directly across from City Hall, which Breeden built and which are an absolute eyesore. And these were not, by the way, reviewed by the DDC because they were considered T1345 or whatever. This property should and has to be reviewed by the DDC because it is an abutting property. So I would suggest, just to talk about one thing, this mixed use of all these materials is just a way to make something cheaper. I would like to see these in brick.
Thank you, sir. Your time is up. Madam Secretary.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is anyone else on the call who would like to address this application, you may come forward and state your name and your address, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak.
Ma'am, this is Mr. Rettenauer. Am I able to respond to a couple of last comments we've heard?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Rettenauer, if it's very brief.
Yes, sir. I'm going to address two things very quickly then. In regards to parking, we have minimum 40-foot deep parking pads right now, along with the garages, so we can actually fit 6 vehicles and the property. The other question is regards to the historical district, and I have that in front of me. The legal term of abutting does not apply when you are actually across a public right-of-way, which this parcel is actually across from the historic district, so it is not actually as what Mr. Page was saying there at this point. Just wanted to clarify those two items. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, sir. Madam Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, can I respond to that?
No, sir. No, sir. We are not going to get into a debate here. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. If there is anyone else who would like to address this application, you may come forward, state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes to speak.
This is Michael Massey. I represent Alvin Keels in this matter. This is another great project for this. My address is 4029 Estates Lane, Portsmouth, Virginia, 23703. Mr. Kills again brings another great project to Portsmouth in an interest to increase the Portsmouth population with a demographic that is much needed in this city. I would state to the chair of this commission that Mr. Keels and I find it exceptionally disingenuous and quite insulting that someone would come and speak on the project and would refer to it as a slave ship being driven in. That is offensive it should be offensive to everyone, and he should have been corrected when he spoke that way. We were always told when you're speaking at these public commissions that there was a certain level of decorum that was expected at all times. We are African American people, and we are very proud of it. We're very proud of this excellent project that Mr. Keels is trying to bring to the city, but we were certainly not going to sit back and let people not of African American descent refer to a project as a slave ship. That is offensive to us and our ancestors, and we did not expect that that would be tolerated in a meeting of this level. And so I wanted to make that comment, and the gentleman was certainly quite offensive with his remarks. He could have been professional and made whatever comments he thought about the project, and we would have been fine with that. But to refer to the project as a slave ship being driven in is offensive. Thank you.
Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If there is anyone else on the call who would like to address this application, you may come forward, state your name and your address. You will be given up to 5 minutes to speak. Appearing to be none, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, this public hearing is now closed.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Commissioners, we are now in need of a motion for UP-21-09 with conditions.
This is Sherry Thaxton. I'd like to make a motion to approve UP-21-09 with conditions.
We have a motion and a second.
Commissioner G, I second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a motion and a second to approve UP-21-09. As I call your name, please reply with a verbal response. Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner Youngblood?
No.
Commissioner Thaxton?
Yes.
Commissioner G?
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman?
Yes.
Commissioner Page?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Yes.
This item is approved by a vote of 6-1. Our final item for today, CA-21-01 citywide. The City of Portsmouth is proposing to amend City Code Chapter 40.2 zoning ordinance to amend Section 40.2-307 to expand the use of signs incorporating automatic changeable copy to all zoning districts with the exception of uses under the residential use category. To amend Section 40.2-307 to allow outdoor advertising signs to have no more than 2 sign faces. To amend Section 40.2-535 to allow an application for a special exception to authorize the modification of a non-conforming sign, excluding non-conforming outdoor advertising signs. To amend Section 40.2-533 to allow an application for a use permit to authorize the modification of a non-conforming outdoor advertising sign, and to amend Section 40.2-301 to require 1.5 off-street parking spaces per dwelling unit for multi-family dwellings. The staff coordinator is Julie Chop. Would the staff coordinator for this application please come forward and present your application at this time?
Hi, good afternoon again, planning commissioners, city council members. This is Julie Chop, senior planner with the city of Portsmouth. This presentation will provide details on the proposed code amendments to the city zoning ordinance in accordance with the March 2nd Planning Commission resolution. Due to current changes in community character and the needs of businesses and institutions in the city, staff has determined that several modifications to zoning ordinance standards are necessary to reasonably and objectively meet the needs of the citizens and businesses while maintaining the health, safety, and welfare of the public. A definition for the term automatic changeable copy is necessary to provide clarity to zoning ordinance users and avoid misinterpretations. The proposed definition for automatic changeable copy is capable of displaying words, symbols, figures, or images that can be electronically changed by remote or automatic means and are distinct from conventional manual change copy. Community character changes have increased the demand for automatic changeable copy signs in all zoning districts. The current zoning ordinance only permits signs incorporating automatic changeable copy in the neighborhood mixed use, general mixed use, high intensity mixed use, light industrial, and industrial zoning districts. Staff has determined that expanding the use of signs utilizing automatic changeable copy to all zoning districts in the city, with the exception of uses within the residential use category, will allow greater utilization of these sign types in a safe and sustainable manner. An off-premises sign is a sign that draws attention to or communicates information about a business, service, commodity, product, event, or any goods or services conducted, sold, or offered at a location other than the premises on which the sign is located. An outdoor advertising sign, commonly referred to as a billboard, is a type of off-premises sign providing displays or display space for general advertising and not primarily or necessarily for advertising related to the premises on which erected or to nearby premises. Such signs are generally designed so that copy or poster on the sign can be frequently changed and the advertising space is for lease. Outdoor advertising signs may contain light-emitting diode electronic displays that comply with state and federal law. An amendment is proposed to clarify that the standards for off-premises signs pertain to both off-premises signs and outdoor advertising signs by revising the section title. Staff has determined that allowing outdoor advertising signs to have two sign faces will not be a detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the public and will allow for increased accommodation of the identification and advertising needs of businesses, institutions, and other entities. Therefore, an amendment is proposed to allow an off-premises sign and an outdoor advertising sign to have no more than two sign faces. Processes have been incorporated into the zoning ordinance to ensure uses and structures are appropriate and compatible with their surroundings. One of the proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance expands the applicability of a special exception application to allow modifications to non-conforming signs on a case-by-case basis. This proposed provision shall not apply to non-conforming outdoor advertising signs or non-conforming off-premises signs. Outdoor advertising signs and off-premises signs that are non-conforming will be permitted to request modification through an application for a use permit. The use permit process is more appropriate than the special exception process in these cases because outdoor advertising signs and off-premises signs require additional oversight to protect the community health, safety, and character. The signage subsection, as well as the use permit subsection, is proposed to be modified to include this applicability. An amendment in the use permit applicability section is needed to clarify that a use permit is required for installation of a new outdoor advertising sign or a new off-premises sign, replacement of an outdoor advertising or off-premises sign, modification of an outdoor advertising or off-premises sign, and modification of a non-conforming outdoor advertising sign and non-conforming off-premises sign. The current zoning ordinance requires a minimum of 2 off-street parking spaces per dwelling unit for multifamily dwellings. Staff has determined that the off-street parking requirement for multifamily residential dwellings should be reduced to 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit to more accurately reflect the need for off-street parking for multifamily developments. Staff recommends approval of the proposed amendments in order to provide necessary modifications to specific zoning standards and facilitate harmonious redevelopment and development within the city. This concludes my presentation, and I will stand by for any questions from the commissioners.
Commissioners, I will call each of your names to see if any of you have any questions for Ms. Chop. I have none. Commissioner Youngblood?
I have none.
Commissioner Thaxton?
I have none.
Commissioner G?
I have none.
Commissioner Coleman? Commissioner Coleman?
I have none.
Commissioner Page?
I have none.
Commissioner Barnes?
No questions.
Madam Secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the public hearing on item CA-21-01. Citizens will be called upon to provide comments or questions and are asked to verbally identify yourself prior to making comments and to mute your microphone when you're not speaking. The applicant for this application is the City of Portsmouth. Ms. Chop, do you have anything additional to add? And commissioners, do you have any questions for her?
I do not have anything to add, but am happy to answer any questions.
Madam Secretary, we've already canvassed the commissioners for their questions. They appear to be done unless there's some other questions. Commissioners, are there any additional questions you'd like to ask? Madam Secretary, there appears to be none.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing on item CA-21-01. If there is someone on the call who would like to address this application, you may do so at this time. Come forward, state your name and your address for the record, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon. This is Mark Gduldy-Gietrowski, P.O. Box 50141, Portsmouth 23703. I have only one item that in this package that's a matter of concern, and that is the reduction of off-street parking spaces from 2 per dwelling unit to 1.5. In the presentation that preceded this, the applicant had actually provided on-site parking or off-street parking allocation within the project for up to 6. I think that's probably overkill, but you know, it was discretionary. In working families, you know, the presence of a second vehicle is not a rarity. And of course, multifamily spans a spectrum. There are luxury apartments. I think just about everything is a luxury apartment these days, based on what I've seen presented. But pretty pretty much working families have at least 2 vehicles. So I suspect that this reduction will be pushing the parking off onto adjacent areas, onto the right-of-way areas where parking is permitted, to make up for the difference. And I'm not sure that's a good option. So I would be interested to see the data that went into this particular recommendation. That won't help me in terms of today's deliberations, but I assume this will be coming before City Council for further action farther down the road. I'd be interested to see the data that support this, if you wouldn't mind sending that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. If there's anyone else on the call who would like to address this application, you may come forward, state your name and your address for the record, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak. Appearing to be none, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, this public hearing is now closed.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Commissioners, the chair is in need of a motion and a second to approve CA 21-01.
This is Commissioner G. I move for acceptance of CA 21-01.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
This is Commissioner Page.
Saxton, I'll second. Excuse me.
That's all right. It's okay.
Oh, good. It's all good today. Madam Secretary, we have a motion and a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A motion and a second to approve CA-21-001. As I call your name, please reply with a verbal response. Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner Youngblood?
Yes.
Commissioner Thaxton?
Yes.
Commissioner G?
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman?
Yes.
Commissioner Page?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Yes.
This item is approved 7-0.
Thank you, Commissioners and Madam Secretary. That concludes our business for today. Under new business, Madam Secretary, I believe we have a resolution that we need to entertain. Is that correct?
That is correct. Mr. Baldwin will address that.
Sure. Mr. Baldwin?
And good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. Good to see everyone today.
Good afternoon.
I know you haven't seen me, but I have been here. You were all, I believe, provided a copy of the resolution. It was prepared by the City Attorney's Office, and a little background on that. You may be aware, if you watch our planning and zoning items go forward to City Council, that Council is required under the Portsmouth process to take items through 2 readings. We have what we call first reading, it's the public hearing, and then 2 weeks later, applications come back when they formally adopt the an ordinance for a rezoning or code amendment or a resolution for a use permitting. And I think you probably may have surmised from some of your planning commissioner training or watching other localities that Portsmouth's pretty unique in that I'm not aware of any other locality that makes applications run through City Council twice. In any event, City Council's interested in eliminating that second reading process. They've asked for appropriate code amendments to be processed to allow them to consider doing away with the second reading process. There's 2 places in the city code they have to deal with. Chapter 2 of the city code is where under the city administration, where the process is initially introduced. And that is an item the city attorney's office will draft the appropriate code amendment for City Council. In addition to that, it's also carried in the zoning ordinance. probably not surprisingly, since it only deals with zoning items. So in order for the city council to consider removing that second reading requirement, we would have to propose a code amendment for them to do that. And as you're well aware, we need the authorization from the Planning Commission to initiate that process. And therefore, that's what that resolution is all about. You may find it also ironic a little bit that this will require city council to have 2 readings on this to repeal the second reading requirement. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have regarding this proposed amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Baldwin. Commissioners, I'll call each of your names to see if you have any questions for Mr. Baldwin. I have none. Commissioner Youngblood?
I have none.
Commissioner Thaxton?
I have none.
Commissioner G?
I have actually a simple one. Is there any reasoning that this was passed in the first place? Why we had 2
Well,
readings?
I'll give you my my theory, okay, best I can do. In years past, and I mean many years past, used to be a lot more, first of all, there used to be a lot more applications winding their way through the process, but also there used to be a lot more modification of conditions on the floor at city council meeting, a lot more negotiation. I think these days the process before these items get that far along has pretty much worked through a lot of those proposed conditions. So we don't see nearly that much interest in debating conditions or modifying conditions on the floor. So what happened today is if you made a bunch of modifications on the floor, it gives the city attorney's office 2 weeks when they come back with a resolution, have a clean resolution with the modified conditions in it. But I think the fact that that doesn't happen anymore, really the need to do it in that process no longer exists. And that's my what I've been told over the years is why that was created in the first place.
Thank you for that clarity.
Commissioner Coleman?
I have no questions.
Commissioner Page?
I have no questions.
Commissioner Barnes?
No questions.
Before we take the motion, Madam Secretary, would it be appropriate to read the resolution so it becomes a part of the record?
Mr. Baldwin, I think that would be okay.
Certainly.
That will be fine.
You want me to read it, Regina, or do you have it?
Yeah, yes, sir. If you would, please.
I'd be glad to read it. Certainly. This resolution to initiate amendments to the zoning ordinance be prepared by staff. Whereas from time to time, the public necessity, convenience, general welfare, and good zoning practice warrant the evaluation and consideration of modification to the City of Portsmouth zoning ordinance. And whereas the zoning ordinance should be maintained as a living document, adjusting to the needs of the community as determined appropriate by the Planning Commission and City Council. Whereas the City of Portsmouth has traditionally required 2 readings before City Council for the approval of text and map amendments to the zoning ordinance and for the approval of use permits. And whereas at its meeting on April 27th, 2021, City Council expressed support for reducing requirement to a single reading, now therefore be it resolved by the Planning Commission of the City of Portsmouth, Virginia, that the staff is instructed to prepare draft amendment to the zoning ordinance to reduce the requirement for the approval of text and map amendments and use permits from 2 City Council readings to 1. And that would be adopted by the Planning Commission, City of Portsmouth, Virginia, electronic meeting held on May 4th, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Baldwin. Commissioners?
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
this is Mark Godova-Gutrovsky. I would ask that you allow public comment on this. It was not advertised in the agenda.
Madam Secretary, please allow public comment.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, if I could speak to that.
Sure.
This is not an item that requires public comment. If the Planning Commission were to allow the city's planning department staff to work on this would in fact come back for a properly advertised public hearing, which is what's provided for in the both the city and the state code in terms of considering text amendments. There's no requirement for public comment on the initiation of a code amendment in this manner.
So for clarity, we're just seeking to instruct the department to start working on this. We're not pushing it.
That's correct. What we would do.
We are not approving anything. We are simply directing the staff to start working on it.
That's correct. And we would prepare the proper code amendments and we would bring those back to the planning commission for a fully advertised public hearing.
And when it comes back, Mr. Baldwin is correct, it will come back for public hearing. So everybody will have a chance at that time. Commissioners, you have heard the resolution. The chair's in need of a motion.
This is Commissioner G. I move that we instruct the Planning Commission staff to research and prepare a resolution. I guess. Is that right?
We're preparing the ordinance.
On the ordinance, yes.
Yes.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner G. Commissioners, is there a second?
This is Commissioner Page. I second.
We have a motion and a second to have the staff prepare a resolution to initiate amendments to the zoning ordinance to be prepared by the staff. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Motion and second, and we will be voting. And please, as I call your name, you respond with a verbal response. Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner Youngblood?
Yes.
Commissioner Thaxton?
Yeah.
Commissioner G?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Coleman?
Yes.
Commissioner Page?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam.
This item is approved by votes of 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Baldwin, do you have any additional items for the Planning Commission?
No, sir, I do not.
Commissioners, are there any additional items that we need to discuss today? There being none, Madam Secretary, I believe that concludes our agenda for today. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Let me thank all of you for your time and patience and for the outstanding work that you do every day for the city of Portsmouth. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.